You always believed that being aware, alert, lucid, awake was a clear advantage, correct? Hello, this is the Brutalosophy channel, and in this video, I'm going to explain why you were wrong. Let's dismantle the core assumption you've been carrying, even if you've never said it out loud. The belief that awareness leads to freedom, control, and psychological superiority. You assume that seeing more, thinking deeper, and detecting hidden patterns should naturally make life easier, cleaner, more coherent. After all, if you understand the system, you should be able to navigate it better. If you see through illusions, you should suffer less. That assumption is false. Let me ask you something uncomfortable right away. If awareness were an advantage in practice, why do the most perceptive people you know look exhausted, irritable, detached, or quietly dissatisfied? Have you noticed that? Or do you avoid looking at it too closely? You see people with simpler minds moving through life with less friction, maintaining average relationships, tolerating mediocre work, sleeping at night without spiraling into analysis, while you, who see too much, carry constant mental weight. If awareness were a reward, why does it feel like a burden? You might tell yourself this is temporary, that awareness hurts at first, but eventually stabilizes. That's a common objection. It sounds reasonable. It's wrong. Awareness doesn't hurt until it passes. It hurts because it removes psychological defenses that never regenerate. Once you see certain patterns, manipulation, self-deception, social mediocrity, there is no return. There is no switch to turn it off. What you call a difficult phase is actually your new baseline perception. The mistake is expecting comfort from clarity. Awareness doesn't give you answers. It removes anesthesia, and that changes everything. You often assume your suffering comes from overthinking. You've heard that diagnosis before, haven't you? That you analyze too much. That maybe you should feel less, think less, let things flow. That framing is convenient. It's also backwards. The issue is not excessive thinking. The issue is awareness without proportional agency. Awareness without power produces chronic frustration. Look at your professional life. You notice political games, incompetence masked as authority, decisions driven by ego or fear. You see it clearly. But that clarity doesn't automatically give you leverage to change anything. In fact, it does the opposite. It forces you to remain inside an absurd structure while fully aware that it's absurd. The less conscious person completes tasks and disconnects. You don't. You carry the tension of knowing the machine is broken and still having to operate within it. That is not privilege. It is psychological load. You may argue that awareness makes you more ethical, more aligned with your values. Partially true. But let's be precise. It makes you more aware of the gap between your values and reality, not more capable of closing that gap. Ethics without context becomes isolation. Values without adaptation become rigidity. Moral awareness without room for expression turns into resentment. Now consider your relationships. You detect emotional patterns in others. You see avoidance, projection, manipulation, unresolved trauma. You understand it, but understanding does not protect you. Often, it exposes you. You tolerate more than you should because you get it. You justify behavior that a less aware person would simply reject. You call this empathy. In many cases, it's an inability to enforce boundaries without guilt. Ask yourself this honestly. How many situations have you stayed in because you understood too much? How many relationships lasted longer than they should have because you confused comprehension with responsibility? That's not maturity. That's psychological cost. Awareness doesn't come with instructions. It doesn't automatically teach you how to act better. It simply removes illusions. And living without illusions requires an internal structure most people never build. You may be tempted to think, the problem is that the world isn't designed for conscious people. That thought sounds sophisticated. It's also a trap. It relocates responsibility outward. The world is not obligated to accommodate your lucidity. The relevant question is different. Have you developed the capacity to carry what you see? Because this is where most people collapse. Awareness expands perception, but it also expands ambivalence. You start seeing multiple sides of almost everything. That makes decisions harder. You perceive loss in every option. Less aware people choose quickly because they see less. You hesitate because you see too much. They move forward with simple mistakes. You remain still, trying to avoid complex ones. This is a major blind spot. You believe your caution reflects intelligence. In excess, it's just fear with good arguments. Look at the major decisions you've postponed, career changes, endings, risks you never took. How many stayed suspended because you could rationally argue against all of them? Awareness became an excuse for paralysis, and every year of postponement accumulates psychological debt, another dimension you avoid confronting. Awareness increases your perception of existential absurdity. Once you understand how social narratives are manufactured, how status is arbitrary, how many goals are hollow, it becomes difficult to play the game sincerely. You lose the necessary naivety to fully engage. That doesn't make you free. It often makes you cynical, or worse, apathetic. Have you caught yourself thinking, none of this makes sense, but I have to keep going anyway? That thought doesn't appear in anesthetized minds. It appears in those who see the emptiness behind structures, yet still must pay bills, maintain roles, perform identities. That friction between lucidity and necessity is exhausting. Here's another illusion. Awareness puts you above others. It doesn't. It simply places you outside certain automatisms. Socially, that often carries a cost. You feel alienated in shallow conversations, irritated by emotional cliches, impatient with simplistic solutions. Over time, this can turn into silence. You stop speaking not because you're shy, but because you've learned that speaking rarely changes anything. That can look like quiet maturity. Often, it's resignation. Be clear about this. Awareness is not a moral virtue. It's a psychological condition. And like any condition, it requires management. Without management, it becomes refined suffering. You might be asking now, so what's the alternative? Being unaware? That question itself reveals another trap. This isn't a choice between seeing and not seeing. Once you see, it's done. The real issue is whether you're willing to pay the full cost of awareness without romanticizing it. Because awareness charges interest, it demands energy, responsibility, congruent action. Understanding patterns is meaningless if you continue living as if you don't understand them. That creates internal dissonance. Sustained dissonance erodes mental health. Here's a concrete example. You recognize that certain environments are toxic. You know exactly why they're toxic. Yet you stay because of convenience, fear, or habit. Every day you remain, awareness doesn't comfort you. It silently indicts you. Less aware people sleep fine in those conditions. You don't. That isn't bad luck. It's causality. Awareness requires alignment. Alignment costs. It may cost status, security, belonging. That's why many people prefer to understand without changing. But that's the worst configuration possible. Clarity without courage. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right moment. Usually that's existential procrastination. The right moment doesn't arrive because reality doesn't reorganize itself to soothe your anxiety. The choice is always uncomfortable. Awareness doesn't reduce that discomfort. It clarifies it. Another thing you resist acknowledging, awareness reduces your capacity for positive self-deception. Less aware people can tell themselves motivating stories easily. You can't. You detect narrative flaws before finishing the sentence. That undermines enthusiasm, faith, hope. Not because you're pessimistic, but because your self-deception radar is too sharp. This can feel like intellectual integrity. Without controlled suspension of doubt, it becomes depletion. Absolute awareness is not human. It's immobilizing. So yes, awareness is a curse if you expect it to provide comfort, belonging, or emotional ease. It offers none of that. It offers clarity. And clarity is not designed to make you feel better. It's designed to force responsibility for the consequences of what you already know. Let's end with something you may not want to accept. If awareness has only produced suffering in your life, the problem is not the world, not others, not the system. It's that you still want the benefits of unconsciousness while refusing to give it up. Understanding is not consolation. Lucidity is not care. Seeing is not the same as living according to what you see. As long as you treat awareness as an identity or a badge of superiority, it will keep punishing you. The only adult option is to accept the full cost, to act on what you know, even when it brings no relief, no praise, no comforting narrative. There is no promise of peace in this. There is only coherence, and that is all awareness ever demands.